Good afternoon. How's everybody doing today? Thanks for coming for my stream. Kind of unexpected on a Monday. I'm usually doing Sunday afternoons, but I had a lot to do yesterday, and today I have a day off. Since my employer prefers I do work on work time rather than streaming, I'm doing this on my day off. Thanks for coming. So we we're hitting the 10th session. Um, and I'm sorry, I just realized I did not label the stream. So let me do that real quick. And then we'll get started coding. Um, let's see here. Stream manager. All right. Well, maybe. Yeah. Well, I think we've got the right thing on there. Looks good. Okay. So today, I think we'll mostly wrap up the stuff with Hardhat, the HTTP client we've been working on, um, and I want to do a little bit more automation on it because it's not going to be something that I'm going to be able to spend a lot of time on outside of the live stream. Um, so what I want to do today, and why don't I just switch over so we can talk about it. Um, Here we go. Okay, so today I want to finish up the README examples, which is not the most interesting Elixir content, but we really, we got last time we got pretty far into the introductory stuff and got quite a few of the sections broken out in an outline. So we can do that. But the other thing I want to do, as I mentioned, because I don't have a lot of time off stream to do this, I'm going to set up a workflow on GitHub Actions to automatically publish to Hex.pm. And I think that will be a really useful way to end the stream, and also just to show it's not hard to do this. If you're going to start your own open source library that you want to publish on Hex, then it should be straightforward. I have off stream taken a few steps just for the sake of privacy of what the publishing key is. I've generated one off stream, and I've installed it on the repo so that we can add that to our actions and be not share that permanently on the internet. Okay, so let's go into the other thing I wanted to do today, because our buddy, friend of the show, etc., Mitch, speak of the devil, he has been working with the folks who write Zed, the editor that I'm using, to integrate his new language server for Elixir. And so maybe we'll start by just poking around and see how it goes. I have installed it. You can see if I go here, I've set in my settings Elixir LSP NextLS, which is only valid if you're on Zed Preview. It's not on the mainline Zed. But since a couple episodes ago we did some live pairing with Quinn Wilton, and we used Zed Preview's social features to do that, where it just lets you connect to your friends and colleagues and share an editing session with them. So since we did that, I've been on preview and I've been loving it, and actually it's been relatively stable and working pretty well. So the frequent updates on it is really really nice. Way better than what I was getting on Emacs, and I've still got Emacs here. You can see for our notes. But Zed is my day to day, which I've been on Emacs for over 10 years, and I did not expect to switch. Yeah, I have already done that, Mitch. Thank you for reminding me. He says make sure to restart Zed. If you haven't since configuring Next.ls, I have, and it actually gave me the pop-up that says, do you want to allow beam.smp and epmd to listen? I'm like, yes, I know what those are. Cool. So we're gonna start with README stuff, and I think that I will hide these because we don't really need it. So okay, cool. And then we'll try out some of the stuff. There might be one or two things that we need to do when documenting the modules, because we're gonna go back and forth with making the hex docs output, making sure they look okay, because we're gonna try to release this sucker today. All right, so our getting started section has. Let me. I have not edited that. Okay, so we're on a clean Git state right now. Okay, so Hardhat's designed to be easy, but includes okay. I think one thing I want to do is we'll make a new section up here, which is why Hardhat, and we'll put to do in here because I wanna motivate it. I think that I spent a lot of time, especially in the first and the first several the first episodes of this stream, talking about why we were building it. But I think it's important to write this down. I eventually want to do a blog post as well after we've tagged 1.0, no longer in release candidate, and then we can kind of publicize it. But we definitely need this why. I think there's so many, even within Elixir being a kind of small community, a niche language, there's so many options that you can choose from. And, aside from, well, I just wanted to build it, which is a valid reason for anybody, I want to motivate why someone else should use this and possibly contribute back if they find bugs or enhancements that need to be done. So we'll make that section. But I think the more important part is we need to clean up the other sections. And I think that we handled that to do, but let's check that. So we're going to start. We'll reread getting started. The installation is basically hex. There's nothing new there. If we had left in the generated README, this would probably be there, but I had to rewrite it. Okay. Hardhat is designed to be easy for creating quick wrappers on HTTP APIs, but includes many options for customization. To define a simple client, do something like the following. Okay. Okay, and then we have a comment about add it to your supervisor required. Use your client to make requests. Okay. As mentioned in the example above, it is imperative, and I kind of want to bold that, even though it's like, it's a strong word. Imperative for you to supervise the client module that includes the use Hardhat macro. Without starting the client under supervision, you will not be able to make requests. Okay, and then we're going to discuss that more in connection pools down below. Okay, general behavior. Hardhat is built on top of Tesla and uses Finch as the adapter. Because Tesla is the foundation, you're welcome to utilize let's simplify that, use publicly available Tesla middleware modules in your Hardhat-based client, with the exception that we recommend you use our timeout instead of Tesla middleware timeout. Okay, and we're linking down to the bottom. I think last time we figured out that so this will not work when it's on the README page on GitHub, this hash, but when it's generated into Xdoc, that's what it'll jump to. I wish there were actually a more consistent way to do that between the two things, but for the most part, I think Elixir sensibly wants you to write your documentation inside your module. I just didn't want to write it twice. So, and I prefer this mode of editing over the inside a triple quote. So, okay. All right. So then we have an example where you're putting plug, and setting up some middleware. Okay, in addition to the adapter selection and default Tesla behavior, use Hardhat will inject the common functionality listed above. Okay, so that was our checklist up at the top. after any middleware that you supply via plug. The current list is as follows. Okay, and then I think we wanted to link to these, but given that these will generate doc links, we don't necessarily have to. We should potentially, because we've got retries down here. Yep. Okay, so let's do see below, and we need to do, that's module retries. And then we'll just copy paste this because that's useful. We can rename this. This is telemetry and tracing, and this will be the same. We might, if that looks too heavy, we might change this C below to something else. But at least we'll have links down to the sections where it's relevant. Okay. Oof. Last night just hit me. For those who care, brief aside, my wife and I went to the final concert of Beyonce's latest tour last night, and we got home between 1:30 and 2 a.m. So I'm lagging a little bit today. That's why I was so busy yesterday and I didn't stream. One of the reasons. Okay, so connection pools. I want to split right here because I think we need to look at what we generate in the builder. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Here. Nope. So we're going to remember the key P. Yeah, here we go. Builder. Okay, and let's put this over here because I want to, and we need defaults. No, P, defaults. There we go. Okay, so pool options. We're going to have to look at Finch's options and probably explicitly link to them as well here, because I think it's important that we make sure that someone coming into this and wanting to customize it has the right references to know what to look at. Okay, so Finch. So there's sort of this thing. Yeah, we did. So default size 10. Yep. Oops. Okay. I think I need to look at no, that's not what it is. There used to be more information here, and maybe it's part of Mint. I don't care about logging TLS secrets. Okay, this is interesting. I thought there was more detail here about the I mean, maybe it's part of. Oh yeah, there it is. It's on Start Link. Okay, let's go back. Start Link has the options. Okay, so really, what we need to do is find a way to link to this. And I think our best bet is just to link to Finch start link. Okay, so we mentioned that you have to supervise. So let's say Hardhat uses, okay, as mentioned above, Hardhat uses Finch as the adapter. By default, this, and we will link to, we're going to link to Hardhat, oops, .defaults .pool options 1. This creates a, by default, this is mentioned of as the adapter. Okay, by default, it specifies a connection pool size of 10. Okay, and leaving the rest. Yeah. All right. Thank you for coming. And sleep well. Thank you. So leaving the rest of the options. And this is not worded well. Okay. But sets no other options. For on the adapter. Okay. And I think that what we'll do here is we'll link to Finch start link 1. I think it's 1. Yeah, start link 1. The name of the Finch process is prescribed by the use Hardhat macro, but you can set any other options for the pool that you like, including creating more than one pool or setting the HTTP protocol or TLS options you would like to use. Okay, and then we're going to give an example. So overriding the pool options function. So we'll give an example here. Let's say, so let's do def module, and we've got let's give it a name. This is like let's say it's an H2 client, and that's a good way to start. So we'll say use Hardhat, and then we'll say pool, and I want to put a comment here. This function overrides the default coming from hardhat.defaults. Okay. And then we will say overrides so we can say you can the overrides will be passed from your process supervision initial arguments. Okay, put a return there. Okay. Okay, so if we wanted to do that, we'd want to do, say, default, and we say size. The thing with, and we need to be careful here because Finch historically used only one process for HTTP2, um, and does, yeah, protocol. Okay, so there sadly aren't examples here. Okay, number of connections. So used by only HTTP1 pools, since HTTP2 is able to multiplex through. I don't really actually agree that that's a good decision, but size is always one. Count should be configured to increase capacity. Oh, okay. So this is actually saying how many pools, and then you can multiplex across multiple pools. It's kind of weird. But I guess for the case of HTTP2, since you're able to send multiple requests through the single connection, it tracks request IDs and responses to particular things, and so as part of the protocol, you can do that. All right, so let's say this is so we don't use size. Oops. We do use protocol, right? So protocol HTTP2. Hi, Eduardo. Good to see you. Thanks for coming. And yes, Hardhat is coming back to life from my memory and the experience of rebuilding it. So good to see you. Thanks for coming. Okay, so we're gonna say it's a protocol is HTTP2, and then we're gonna give it a pool of 3 connections. So I say it's a pool of 3 connections because I have three pools of 1 connection each, but that's splitting hairs. Okay, so now we could also go. And this will make us change the syntax, unfortunately, because of strings versus atoms. But if we do that, we could also say HTTPS some other h2host.com, and then we could so when we say some HTTP1 only host.com, and then we have a size of 20 for that particular host. These are the sorts of things you can do with Finch. That looks pretty good. And let's put a comment in here. Default, we'll use HTTP2 with 3 pools of 1 connection each. I don't want to go and like just completely redo all of Finch's documentation, but I want to give a combination of direct guidance as well as examples, so that if you come into this, you're like, well, how the heck do I set it up to use HTTP2? Well, there's an example here that might be enough for you to find the relevant things you need to know. This host, we choose this host only. We're using HTTP1. And a single connection or single pool of 20 connections. Okay. So now I think that's pretty good to start with. Let's reread this paragraph above because I feel like I was having brain blockages while we were writing it. Okay. As mentioned above, Hardhat uses Finch as the adapter. By default, when we say by default Hardhat specifies a connection pool size of 10. Connection pool of size 10. How about we do that? But sets no other options on the adapter. The name of the Finch process is prescribed by the use Hardhat macro, but you can set any other options for the pool that you like, including creating more than one pool or setting the HTTP protocol or TLS options you would like to use. Okay, that's overly verbose, by overriding the pool options function. Okay, that's pretty good. Hard ha hard hat. Okay. Cool. So one section down, let's talk about telemetry and tracing. So one thing that we did on the original Hardhat that I don't know how I feel about, and it may be something we do in a future release, but I'm a little bit mixed on this. We defined our own telemetry middleware, which was useful in that if someone came along and had attached telemetry handlers to the default Tesla middleware, which is what we're including in this open source version, and then we were expecting something that was in the Hardhat request, but wasn't in some generic Tesla client request, things got a little bit messy. So I feel like this might be something that we leave alone for now, and let the community, if there is any that grows around this, figure out what they want to do. My personal opinion is that we should probably submit a patch to Tesla, and let's look at the main branch, and just let you modify what the prefix is, so on these events. So it really just doesn't. And that's really unfortunate that this is hard coded here. So like, I would love for this to have an options in there, and default to request, start or whatever. And honestly, I'm really surprised that this does not do telemetry span around it, and then it's bothering to do its own measurement, and there's probably a valid reason for that. I've just forgotten. But the big thing here is I would love for you to be able to configure what this event is. And I don't know, it's so bothered with, are we using the old way or something? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's go back to this. So we want to talk about the telemetry events that it emits, and as well as the way that we create open telemetry spans, and what we attach to them. Yeah. Okay. So let's. We don't have any configuration on that in the defaults, right? So we don't need to bother. Yeah, we're not, since we have the newer Tesla integrations, we don't have to be concerned with making our own span attributes. Mitch, go to definition doesn't work. Maybe it's in a sometimes it doesn't work on Rust either, but yeah, we'll just we can find that in the depths. That's not a problem. Open telemetry Tesla. It may also be possible that it doesn't work because it's inside a macro, but that's okay. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I The Rust integration sometimes has problems with if you're not like I work on multi-target projects. Yeah, I know it's like string interpolation for code. I work on multi-target projects in my day job, and sometimes if I'm building the same project for like a native platform as well as for WebAssembly, and I have those like config overrides in there saying, "Hey, we're only targeting WebAssembly on this," then I don't get any of the fancy Rust Analyzer features because it thinks, "Oh, you're not compiling to WASM32, whatever." Same. I was thinking it might be a similar problem here, but yeah, quotes and unquotes are, yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mitch. That's good to know. I'll keep track of that for next time. Okay, so the main thing I want to go to here is the what gets added as attributes. Just for, I think it's documentation's sake, but we may have to dig into this a little bit. Yeah, let me try it on something real quick where it's not inside a macro. So here, let's try go to definition for that. Now, is it also possible that this is because it's in a dependency? It like won't jump to the deps directory. Let's try it. Let's try it on something simpler. That's inside a quote. What is not inside a quote? Okay, so that's inside a quote as well. Dang, this whole module. Try hovering over something. Regulator. Okay, that works. Cool. Go to definition. Aha! Thank you for the help, Mitch. Yeah, so it needs to be in regular code, not inside quotes. I get that. That's not so bad. Okay. So telemetry. Hardhat includes the stock Tesla middleware.telemetry. And also, Mitch, thank you again for making next to less. I'm so psyched. Anyway, for injecting your own metrics and monitoring systems into its operation. The events emitted by this middleware are Tesla request start. Oops. At the beginning of the request, Tesla request stop at the completion of the request, and then Tesla request exception when a non-status HB exception occurs. Oh, thank you. That was so nice of you, Mitch, making it just for me. I doubt that. So let's make an example real quick. So def module telemetry client. You know, this is not that interesting. So we'll just use Hardhat, and we're not doing anything special there. And this will say telemetry dot And this is where I have to remember it. And we did it in the tests not that long ago. Let's look at what our test does. Haha. Telemetry test. Attach. Telemetry task. Attach. Okay. So, and we don't have to do it in an efficient way here. My handler. And we're going to attach to Tesla request stop. This is probably going to need to be on multiple lines so it's legible. You know, I think I mentioned this last time on stream. This is not the most engaging Elixir coding content, but if you're building an open source library, this is the work. Mitch can attest, I'm sure, with his stuff. This is the work you do. So it's important work. And we'll say it takes... there's a fun here. And we'll just pass nils the state. So the fun is the event. Yeah, I know. Well, you're just cooler than me, Mitch. Everything you do is fun and exciting. And then there's the measures, and then the metadata, and we'll figure out what we're going to do with these in a moment. And config, and let's put that. And we could say, so the metadata, by the way, is the Tesla env. If I recall correctly, and the measures are, like duration. So we could say something like, and this is dumb, never do this. Don't do this. Attach to your metrics system instead. So we'll say IO put s made a request in we'll say it is God, I switch languages too often. It is $, isn't it, inside there? Let's see, measures duration 2. Let's just say that, and we'll make that not ignored. Great. Great pen. Thank you. Is it really? No. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Problem is, like I said, I keep switching between Rust and TypeScript and Elixir, and it gets really confusing. I am being JS pilled. It's true. It's true. I only do it for my job, Okay, so we've got telemetry events. Let's talk about open telemetry. So we'll say Hardhat. I'm going to mistype that so many times. Keep the heckling going. Wraps each request in an open telemetry span. And propagates. And I think that did we override that in the defaults? I think we did, because I remember that being on the original Hardhat. Except it's not an option here. Oh, right. So actually, if you have no tracer, it's not going to inject anything. Yeah. Okay. And propagates the trace context to the destination host. This is this is something that I think we might want to submit a PR, because this is fine if you are propagating to another host that you control and is part of your infrastructure and participates in the same traces. Um, but but if we are propagating to a third-party API, that's not so good. It's not that it necessarily leaks anything, but it might if you've set baggage in the open telemetry context, and especially for using that baggage to propagate things like user IDs or anything that might be considered proprietary. Just the trace headers, just the trace parent and the trace context probably won't. Um, but this could be potentially problematic. So let me think about that. Um, we should. I would hope that we should be able to pass an option there to skip propagation. Okay, so this statement is still correct. Hardhat wraps each request in an open telemetry span and propagates the trace context to the destination host. Um, okay. Um, I don't really. Okay, so we aren't exposing this option, and I think it's probably smart not to. Um, but I would almost rather give the person taking this on the option. So, all right, builder. Yeah, we don't specify that option. Okay. And I think what we'll do here is we'll link to the Tesla middleware telemetry, or open telemetry rather. Um, it does not currently expose the ability to change the span name for in the trace, but it will observe any path parameters. You interpolate into the URL. Okay, and here I want to link to our middleware. I think we have that documented, so hardhat.middleware. See, I found a new way to misspell it. Path params. So that similar spans can be easily correlated, or aggregated is the word I want, not correlated. Okay. Yep. Okay, so I think we can remove this to do. One down, 3 or 4 more to go. Okay. The fun failure detection section. Okay. So, provides two different, failure detection and recovery. Failure detection. This is about back off as well. Um, it's kind of like a release valve. What's the of course circuit breaker is the fuse thing. Regulator is not really a circuit breaker. Failure detection and back off strategies. Let's start with that. And let's put a, so we'll say hard is not the right word, static circuit breaking with fuse. And then say dynamic rate, request rate regulation with regulator. These strategies cannot be used together safely. So you must choose one when defining your client. Hey, thank you, Lusky. Thanks for coming. So we're going to go ahead and give another example here. Hard cutoff client. And then we'll say use Hardhat and we'll say defaults to fuse, right? And then we can, let's look at I don't have it over here. Defaults. Yep. Okay, so we're going to say customize the fuse behaviors or customize fuses circuit breaking. And here's a good place to, because it's so confusing all the frickin' time, we can talk about what this options tuple means, because oh man, it is so not intuitive. So we're going to say standard. Let's say that was 50 requests in a second. That's pretty aggressive. Let's say 10 requests in 500 milliseconds, and reset 1 second. And let's put a comment in here. 10 failed requests in 0.5 secs flips the breaker, which resets after 1 second. Okay. And then we can say, we don't need to put all the options here, but let's say should, no, but I guess we need to supply all of them. We definitely need to supply should melt. And we'll say module should melt 1. You say use our custom failure test, and we want to say yeah. Thanks for coming, Mitch. Have a good afternoon. Keep original error true. Return the error that caused the fuse to break. Use our custom failure test, and then go fast and a little loose. Mode right and dirty, async dirty. Okay. And then we will do I want to put another comment here. This is also valid. and we'll put it in a comment, strategy views. Okay. And then we're going to say customize how responses are determined to be failures. Okay, and then we'll say should melt, and this takes a Tesla env, just to be clear. And we'll say, oh, and it's actually not that. It is going to be error and then some POSIX error, right? We'll say, how we make this in one clause. I like multiple clauses, but we'll say case result do error. Is it fat arrow? No, it's narrow arrow. This is true. And then okay. And we'll just match Tesla env here to be clear. False. Okay, why is my highlighting janky? There we go. Okay. And we'll say, we'll put a little more commentary here. In this case, only TCP type errors are considered, or TCP adapter type errors are considered failures. Any response is, any valid response is fine. Okay. And then we'll say this module, let's put a little comment up here. This module uses Fuse for failure detection, and back off. Uses regulator for failure detection and back off. And since I'm less familiar with regulator, this one's going to be a little bit harder to write a similar example. Dynamic regulation client. Okay. Use Hardhat strategy. Strategy is regulator. Okay. Overrides default of Fuse. Okay. Thank you, Clark. Have a good one yourself. Thanks for coming. Okay, so similar to Fuse, we have options for regulator, and I don't really know these that well. I'm relying on the documentation for regulator to here. There was an error. Regulator to give us useful information about them. So, and it does include, it does have its own defaults in there that we just slurped up into this function. So let's say, right, let's say customize regulators ramp up and back off strategy. So I think I need to put that in there because it's very important to know that it's not just some willy-nilly. It's actually this particular algorithm which produces those sawtooth patterns in your capacity. Okay, so we're going to say def regulator ops. I suppose I don't need the parens there, but I think, did we do that up here? Yeah, let's remove those just for consistency. Okay, and then we'll say should regulate, and this is module, and I think I made an error up here. Yep, this needs to have an ampersand in front of it, so it makes it a thunk, or not a thunk, but an anonymous function. Should regulate 1. Okay, and this needs that ampersand as well. And then let's say back off ratio 3.5, back off by half instead of 90%. On back off by on failure by half instead of 90%. Okay, and that's probably a good enough example. I think we want to probably point people to, and I'll do this up here. We want to say a regulator did we link to it? Regulator limit AIMD. Yeah. Limit.aimd. And I think that this is, we'll say Tesla.middleware.fuse, right? And this is implemented with hardhat.middleware.regulator. Okay. And let's go ahead, and we were going to customize how responses are determined to be failures. And we'll put in another example here. We'll kind of do like this. So I'll just copy it to save a little time. And this is def should regulate. Should regulate. There's a question in my mind about whether we should do question mark on these like that. But let's see. We're going to do a different little bit here. We're going to say this is true. And we're going to say status, is it? Tesla.env. Status, right. So if status, let's say status is 429, which is the 2-minute request. So to customize how responses are returned to failures in this case, TCP level, TCP adapter level errors are considered failures, as well as HTTP 429 too many requests responses. Okay, so that's a pretty extensive example. We show both fuse mode and regulator mode and the configuration, and I think I think we should potentially link to our defaults module to those, like those callbacks that are related to this middleware. I say callbacks, these functions which configure them. Um, just for thoroughness. Um, see, and that's the problem is if I put this in an example, it's not going to have a link. Um, where can we do that? Let's stop this here, and let's split this example in two. I think that's the right answer, and then we can talk about the fuse failure detection is configured with two functions in your client, which are delegated. That's a good question, Eduardo. Do you still need to pass the entire ops, or did you change that? Might be worth mentioning. I think you're asking about, can you pass only a limited number of keys here? For Yeah, I think for fuse you need to, and maybe that's something that we can do in a future stream because it might be useful to have the module that calls use Hardhat call its ops and overlay that on top of the defaults. That would be really sensible behavior. So let me write that down because I think that that's important to do potentially. And we'll say merge user overrides with the defaults on important options functions. And then so that would mean that when we call the defaults here, for example for regulator ops, and then we're calling the potential override, then we'll get duplication of effort there, but there's not a huge penalty to pay for that, so it's probably okay. But yes, I think that's a really good point that like here in this case, because fuse middleware, I think it requires ops, but these others are optional. I need to look back at that. But yeah, it would be important to make sure that like that behavior is really clear, and also minimize the number of things that you have to do to customize it. That's a really good point. Okay. With two functions in your client which are delegated, which are have default implementations. I'm using the word default a lot. You need to be careful about overdoing it. Have default implementations that are injected at compile time. Strategy there. Configure with two function your client, which are default implementations that are injected at compile time. And then we'll say, so this is fuse ops, right? And what I'll do is I'll link to hardhat.defaults.fuse ops 1. Configures the behavior of the middleware. And then this is really like, let's say, configuration for the middleware. That sounds better. And this will be should melt result. And this links to hardhat.defaults.should melt 1. Whether the result of the request should be is considered a failure. Okay, and then we'll do something similar. So like, let me just copy this text and we'll edit it. And we'll put it here. So the regulator, failure detection, okay. And this is regulator ops. Configuration for the middleware. And then should regulate. And this is, okay, so this needs to be regulator ops here. This needs to be should regulate. Should regulate. Whew. Okay. Maybe we need a little bit of discussion about why you might choose one or the other. I know I've discussed that on stream right now, but today's not the best day for my brain. So let's say these strategies cannot be used together safely, so you must choose one when defining your client. If your needs are simple and failures are relatively rare, let's say hard failures are relatively rare, fuse is an easier strategy to comprehend and implement, because it uses a simple failure. I say because it uses a straightforward failure counting algorithm and completely turns off requests when the configured threshold is reached. Okay. And failures are relatively rare. It uses an easier strategy to comprehend them because it uses a straightforward failure counting algorithm and comma and completely turns off requests when the configured threshold is reached. Okay. If you have a more complicated setup and do not want to spend as much time tuning your failure behavior, it's set up high traffic and do not want to spend as much time tuning your failure behavior, regulator allows your client to adapt to rapidly changing conditions by reducing the amount of concurrent work under failure conditions. Under failure without causing a hard stop to activity. Okay, I'm going to reread this because that's a complicated sentence. If you have a much more complicated setup or high traffic and do not want to spend as much time tuning your failure behavior, regulator might be for you. Regulator allows your client to adapt to rapidly changing conditions by reducing the amount of concurrent work in the presence of failure without causing a hard stop to activity. Okay. So the regulator strategy might be for you. Okay, this is not my best writing. But I do want to motivate this rather than just presenting, well, here you go, here's the two things. And I think that it's important that people understand the choices that they're making with this. Okay, I'm going to read this one more time and then we'll move on to the next section. These strategies cannot be used together safely, so you must choose one when defining your client. If your needs are simple and hard failures are relatively rare, Fuse is an easier strategy to comprehend and implement because it uses a straightforward failure counting algorithm and completely turns off requests when the configured threshold is reached. If you have a more complicated setup or high traffic and do not want to spend as much time tuning your failure behavior, the regulator strategy might be for you. Regulator allows your client to adapt to rapidly changing conditions by reducing the amount of concurrent work in the presence of failure without causing a hard stop to activity. Okay. And then we go on, and I want to put maybe the Fuse strategy. Let's put another heading in there just to make that more clear. The regulator strategy. Okay. Okay. You can, okay, I want to say you can override their default behavior by redefining the functions. Yes, it does. That's a good point, Eduardo. It does bound your max concurrency regardless of failures. On the other hand, it also bounds your maximum. Thank you. This is excellent content. Maximum concurrency, even when when requests are not failing. And I say maybe it might also bound your max concurrency when even requests are not failing. But this, yeah, that's the part that's I think hard about regulator is that if you're trying to set the right connection pool size, you're not scaling your connection pool with the regulator results. However, Finch does adapt or can adapt the number of connections. So if you have a bunch of idle connections, it'll shut them down. Which that might be something worth saying. Even requests are not failing. Um, uh, if your utilization is low, I think um, that's probably the point that's better to make there. If your concurrent utilization is low, it might also bound your it might also um, because that's the essence of the AIMD strategy, right? Like if you don't reach the merits for adding a connection or adding a concurrent request, then it's not going to step up the limit. Yeah, it might also bound you, right, even when requests are not failing. The Okay, so the flip side of that, Eduardo, I think is interesting because if your utilization is low enough, like your concurrent activity is low enough. Yeah, thanks. That's a good point. The test. If your concurrent utilization is low enough, you're not going to be able to increase the limit, but you're also not using that limit. So, um, yeah, yeah. This is the challenge with this, and it makes me think about how much more complicated it is to tune the TCP stack on your, if you're going in there, you're tweaking the sysctl stuff on Linux, like you really need to know what you're doing because there's so many knobs to get that performance right. Um, Back in the old days when I was working on React, we had some defaults that were just basically like set the buffers really freaking huge, and I don't know if we did it system wide. We might have set like Nagel's algorithm off, so that you had less ramp up time. Set the TCP windows bigger if you had a higher latency connection. So like there, yeah, there's so many freaking knobs. It's hard. Um, um, so yeah, I think though we've motivated why you might want to use regulator over fuse, and I think especially this bit about high traffic. Um, the flip side of this is there are so many numbers here, like I was talking about with the TCP stack. If you are not setting these right, excuse me, it's gonna be tricky. Um, I agree. The Eduardo says, I think part of the value of batteries included lib like this is to get some insight on how the different middlewares and pieces can affect each other. And unfortunately, I wanted to integrate this because I think it's valuable to have this out there. Nobody's made a Tesla regulator middleware yet, but the usage of it is going to be a lot more niche. Honestly, when I was at Postmates, we used circuit breakers, and we just tracked when fuses were being melted, as part of our metrics, and then looked at times when certain systems would fail, and we'd trigger the fuse and go like, does that number make sense? And so we frequently, um, you know, made an effort uh, to make sure that those were reasonable numbers, and that we would fail fast enough but not too fast. And I think that's one of the challenges here, is like really easy to understand how to configure fuse, even if it's a little bit fiddly and you might not get it right the first time. Regulator, I don't know, and I don't have production experience with regulator, so I think that we maybe have a potential risk there, if we're gonna have regulator shipping with this. That said, it's opinionated, and we choose fuse by default, so you have to explicitly choose regulator. Um, but I appreciate your comments, Eduardo, and also your experience using it at our common employer. Um, is going to help me out. Okay, so whoa, lots of content on failure detection. So I think this part, the retries, is going to be hard to write because we ran into, when we first tried this out, we ran into a bunch of cases where it interacted badly with failure detection, and we kind of need to get that right. At least an explanation. So let me flip over here. We can close regulator out. The builder. No, I closed it again. Builder. Right. So we put retries before the circuit breaker, before the failure strategy. Okay. Which can trigger it. Okay. So how do we start one of these other sections? Say Hardhat injects automatic retries on your requests based on okay. Let's just say directly what it uses. That's probably best. Test on middleware retry. And we'll do something like what we did up here with these, because it's going to be really similar. And let's say retries are configured with two functions. It's going to get really tedious to have this the same sentence. Retry ops. I'm pretty sure we have that in here. Let's see. Yep. Okay. Should retry. Whether the result of the request can be retried. And right, and the links here, I don't think it's worth specifying what these implementations do, but we can do another example, and then have a call out about the and I saw that the other day. There's a way to create like alert boxes in Xdoc, and I may do that for some of these things that need to be called out. But you can override we need to find the functions. Okay. Elixir, and let's say a retry client. Excuse me. Yeah, definitely an example to turn it off. So yeah, let's say this client disables retries entirely, and we'll call it no retries. So we can do. So there's multiple ways we could do that. We could say max retry is 0, or we could say should retry always returns false. I think should retry is the easiest way. Yeah. Oh, also, is there a no circuit breaker option? Not currently. That might be a nice thing to add. So let's do that. I think you should always have something. But maybe that's something. Maybe that's what people want to do. Okay. Okay, so we override uh, should retry to say we should never um, to disable retries entirely. Okay, so def should retry, and we can ignore a do false. Yep. And then this client retries. Let's do something for the options. Um, and here's another case, like Eduardo, you mentioned like we should merge the defaults with whatever the override includes, um, which is interesting because if we do that, we might go back and change how those things work. That might be a really good idea. So this client retries up to 5 times with a minimum delay, and let's do that inside. Some retries client. Use Hardhat. Of let's say 75 milliseconds. And then I'm going to have to probably copy this stuff. Delay 75. Max, I'm going to put it up here. Max retries 5. And then we need this other stuff, max delay, let's say max delay of, forget it, let's put them here. Retry up to 5 times, delay at least 75 milliseconds between attempts, delay at most, say 500 milliseconds between any attempts, so that you can max out at a certain point. So like 500. Should retry. Use this modules. We'll say use the default retry rubric, and that'll be this module. Should retry 1. And add jitter of up to 20% to delays. Okay, no trailing comma, Sean. Okay. Requests. Okay. So now we have some examples. And I need to say something about interactions with failure detection. And this is like, maybe we look up what it is in Xdoc. I don't know if it's in here. If it has a guide or something like that. Nope. Modules. It's probably just mixed docs. No, it's about configuration. Umbrella projects. No. Okay, that's not going to help. I don't remember where it was. Maybe it's on Hex docs. Learn how to write documentation here. Okay, here we go. This is actually in the Elixir docs. Interesting. Okay. Doc tests. Right. Fetch docs. Optional syntax sheet. No, that's not it. Nope. Oh, wait. Does this have any callouts? Alerts. That's what we wanted. Okay, so something like this. We could do something like this. Let's try that and see if it works. We'll find out later. Okay. So retries can interact very negatively with failure detection and back off. And let's link to the previous section with that. Module, what is it? It's just failure detection. Yep. Failure detection. Potentially triggering with failure detection, potentially triggering back off behavior too quickly. Be sure, and let's make a new line here. Triggering. Oops. Okay. Back off behavior too quickly. Be sure to avoid retrying when the failure detectors return error unavailable. Which indicates that the circuit breaker in the fuse strategy or the limiter in the fuse strategy has blown, or the limiter in the regulator strategy is out of capacity. Which indicates that the circuit breaker in the fuse strategy is blown. Circuit breaker, let's get these phrases together. Or the limiter is out of capacity in the regulator strategy. Um, uh, I would say the default implementation of should retry one observes this or let's say implements this caveat. Real quick, before we go on, I haven't generated mixed docs in a bit, so let's do that. Path parms. Hey, good. Thanks for finding that. Let's search in here for path parms. Path parms. Yep. Woo! It's a Monday, and I'm not working. Okay. So let's try that one more time. And just for safety's sake, let's regenerate it from scratch. It still doesn't take that long. And let's open it up. Docindex.html. Okay, so I just want to make sure that those alerts actually work. And also look at anything else that we've changed to make sure that we've got and see, we're going to have to make sure these links are correct. Okay, looking pretty good. This sentence is really awkward. I want to rewrite that. Okay. Okay. Keep going. Let's see if that alert worked. No. So maybe there... I have seen this in Elixir docs, but I guess it's just not using the GitHub syntax for it. Right. So let's see. Let's see if, you know, some of these documents about anti-patterns might have something with a call out in them. There, or maybe there was stuff with deprecated. Not seen it. All right, well, that was worth a shot. I think what I'll do is I'll just remove the call out here and maybe put double bold warning, like that, and then we'll get that stuff. You know, it's not grouped together, but let's reread this. Retry warning: retries can interact very negatively with failure detection, potentially triggering backoff behavior too quickly. Be sure to avoid retrying when the failure detector returns error unavailable, which indicates that the circuit breaker is blown in the fuse strategy or the limiter is out of capacity in the regulator strategy. The default implementation of should retry implements this behavior. Okay. And yeah, and thank you, God, Eduardo, you're a lifesaver. Admonition blocks. Look at what we got here. Please go back to that. Okay. Sports error. Okay, so we can do that. So warning, error info, tip, neutral. Oh, so you have to put a header. Um, so let's do a triple header there. And we can say interaction with failure detection. And then what is it? Okay, so we do something like that. Yeah, and of course that's not going to render the same way on GitHub as it does in Xdoc. And let's do warning. And then, okay, and that needs to be inside the block. Let's see if Zed will do this for us. Nope. Okay. Yeah, so we're going to have to put this in front of every line. And actually, I think I want to just put this all on one line, unless there's actually a line break. Okay, and let's run, oops, mix docs again. And we'll refresh that, and let's go ahead and retries. Okay, that looks pretty good. We may want to do that in other places too. Cool. All right. 4:45. How's everybody doing? Okay, so we've got 2 more sections. We can continue this, or we can take a break, make a commit, and do some Rust. Any thoughts on that? Because I think we have some fun things that we can do, or at least interesting things to do on Datalog. My implementation of naively evaluated Datalog in Rust. One that we definitely need to do is we need to verify the range restriction on rules, which if Quinn were here, I don't know if she is here today, but she would tell us what it means. But basically it means that if you have variables in the head of your rule, they have to be used in the body. And otherwise you get divergence. And then one of the fun things might be, because we had these data structures, make some macros. Parse is a longer term project. I don't think that's good for today. So yeah, let's take a break here. And I want to, let's move this item down. We're not going to do that right now. We still didn't finish the README examples, but we got really far. There's 2 more sections here, and then we want the motivation section before we close that out. But I actually think that let's jump over and make a release action. And that will set us up for me not having to push the button here. We can just make a tag and push it. So, okay. Let's close out the split here, and let's make a commit. Look at that. I think there's one little thing I edited in defaults. Oh yeah, it was just a typo. Okay. Let's make a commit. More README examples, and fix a typo in hardhat.defaults. Or README documentation. Okay. And oops. Okay, I'm going to push to main. This is my personal project. I don't do pull request in my own personal project right now. I'll just do main. Okay, and now what I want to do is create a new workflow. So we are going to, yeah, so that was our CI file. Let's make a release.yaml. And we're going to copy some of this goop. And we'll edit that. Jorbs. Okay, and we're not going to. I wish it didn't indent that. Okay. So this is not going to be on pull request or push branches main. This is going to be on push tags star. And the name of this is going to be a release. Okay. And we'll say release to hex. I think that's fine for a name. And we'll just call it that. Okay, and this is going to be name release package to Hex.pm. Okay, and then there was like some custom actions for this, but it's actually not really that hard to do it directly. So I'm going to say runs on Ubuntu latest, and we don't need the quotes around that. Okay, and then the steps are we're going to uses actions checkout v2, and then we're going to uses earlyf setup beam at v1, and we're going to rather than having the matrix here because we don't actually care, we're going to say OTP version 26.x and Elixir version is 1.15.x, because you don't need. I think we need. You know what? Never mind. We're gonna copy these things because we need the deps. We kind of need everything but the tests, and we'll run this in regular dev mode. So at the very least, I won't have to bother with inlining any of that stuff, and we'll just copy the matrix strategy up here. Runs on name, and then we have the matrix. Okay. And then we use the same cache strategy and install dependencies. We are not going to compile in test mode. We are going to make sure that the docs generate correctly. It's not strictly necessary because the hex step will do it, but I would rather it fail fast if the docs are just plain broken. And then we want to release to Hex.pm. And this is going to be run. Yeah, we're going to run mix hex.publish. Yes. And that'll force it. And we're going to use env. And I saw this earlier. So I had it open. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so you can publish a package directly from your CI. We have all this stuff set up already. I've generated a key. So we set the Hex API key system environment variable, and I just need to look at what I named that. secret in the repo, and we can put that in. So hex API key, and then we'll do something like this. And yep, okay, so over here, go to the settings, and secrets and variables, actions. So I call it Hex.pm key. Yep. And I think it's just secret workflow. Yeah. We don't have environments. Not using organization. Using secrets in workflow. So secrets dot whatever the name is. Okay. Easy peasy. So we'll do secrets dot xpm key. Okay. What's wrong here? Expected array. This is a nice thing about Zed, and I wish more editors would do this. It figures out that this is a GitHub workflow and it checks the YAML. So I didn't mess it up there. Okay, cool. So so we're set up on that. And I think we're good to go. So let's make a commit there. And add release workflow. And then we'll test it real quick. I don't think this will be too bad. Okay, let's push that in there. What's the error? Oh yeah, well, you know, I'm not going to fix that right now. Oh, what the heck, let's do this. Just to make it happy. No errors in my in my editor. GitHub. Fix minor issue in CI workflow. Syntax. Okay. And let's push that. All right. So now what we can do, let's make a new, let's bump the version and tag it. So let's bump it to 4. Okay. And let's bump to 1.0.0 rc.4 testing heck release workflow. The other thing that we might want to do, I think I want to look at the syntax of this again. Don't have it open here. And let's just go to their documentation so I can have it open. Learn GitHub Actions. Let's do this. No. Understanding. Example workflow. Wish they just had the. Okay, rename optional. Okay, on. Workflow syntax. So what I want to do is a workflow dispatch. And what we could do is trigger it manually if it doesn't work for the first time. So workflow dispatch, and then there was a way Yeah, let's just add that to the workflow file for now. We could say on push workflow dispatch, and then we're put nothing in there. And then I think what happens is when you have that, you can choose what it runs from, but I don't recall what that looks like. So we'll just add that. No. Okay. Bump to 1.0.0 rc.4 and and testing release workflow. Okay, and then we'll get tag. Let's see the tags that we have. Okay, get tag v1.0.0 rc.4. So we'll push main and the tag, and let's see what's happening. Okay, so it is running the release workflow. Let's watch it go. Meanwhile, it should also be running our regular CI on the main branch. Oh, hey, and look at that. It published our package. Woo! That was easy. Okay, so I want to go back here and look at our release, and then right. So you can pick branch. What I'd love to do is restrict it to tags. But if we ever needed to manually trigger it again, like if it fails for whatever reason, um, anyway, that should be good enough for me. I'll be conscientious about which one I click, because I would not want to run it having commits past a particular tag and then running it again. So let's see how we're doing. Okay, well, it canceled this one because we started running this. Yeah, it's busy running dialyzer. Okay, let's, while that's going, let's check real quick over on here. I just like close this tab and reopen it. Let's look at Hardhat. Yep, there we go. And we have RC4 pushed automatically. Yay! That's pretty awesome. Our docs are here. We have that cool call out in this section. Good stuff. So I think we'll probably only need one more session to finish that documentation. We'll probably next time look at some of those things that Eduardo suggested. Thank you, Eduardo, for coming. And in the meantime, let's switch gears over to Rust.